Okay, this tutorial is going to be basically half an hour or less tutorial, full-on tutorial of the direct to SpeedGrade, direct link to SpeedGrade option that is now inside of Premiere Pro. I'm going to quickly go through this. Is kind of a quick version for people who are already pretty advanced in Premiere and a little bit in SpeedGrade. I'm going to give kind of a quick overall view of SpeedGrade, the direct to Adobe SpeedGrade option, and also some quick operating instructions inside of SpeedGrade. So some really quick overview, 30-minute overview of color correction in general in SpeedGrade and getting it back to Premiere. Kind of that whole option. So first of all, I've got a sequence here that's been edited, and I've got the thing about this sequence here is I've got like 3 different formats. We've got some Sony MP4 footage, we've got some ProRes footage, and we've got some red footage all mixed up in this 30-second spot. That's the nice thing about the direct to SpeedGrade option is it just like configures all that from a Premiere timeline and takes it right into SpeedGrade very conveniently, and it's very simple. So I'm going to select this timeline. Go up to File, and we're going to go direct link to Adobe SpeedGrade. Once you're through editing, it's going to send this over. I'm going to say yes, it will change save the changes to your current Premiere project, update it, and send it over to SpeedGrade. It'll close Premiere, and you'll see SpeedGrade open. The longer commercial that you have, or the longer timeline that you have, the longer that post-processing will take place. It did it fairly quick with this because it is a 30-second spot, so it did it really quick. I'm going to go up with these little tools here and just do some quick settings here. One of the best settings to increase speed, especially if you're editing off of a Mac laptop or a regular laptop that doesn't have a lot of speed, you can go to dynamic quality here under the tools and change your, first of all, checkmark down sample frames to the specified resolutions that are up here. It'll do downsampling, it'll do it a lot quicker, it'll play back a lot quicker, and it will grade a lot faster. If you don't have a big beefy video card to support SpeedGrade. Depends on if you're not working with 4K. If you're working with 4K footage, usually half paused resolution and quarter playing resolution is the best way to go. Or I should say, if you're working with 1920 by 1080 footage. If you're working with red footage, depending on the speed of your system, this might help right here to bring down the resolution, the playback resolution on a smaller screen. If you're working with 4K footage. If you are running slow, that's an option there. Otherwise, I would suggest keep that at I would suggest to keep this at half and a quarter for pause and play. But I'm going to do that since I'm recording here, and it's going to slow it down a little bit. Okay. Now you'll notice that it's brought over the whole timeline from Premiere. You got clip by clip with all the edits at the 30-second spot. So all the edits, all these movies have been brought over from Premiere, and we're ready to go. Now, the only option that you really have when you send direct to SpeedGrade is this Look tab right here. It's grayed out all these other options that you have with the full software, that you have to do EDL or AAC or XML exportation to SpeedGrade, which is a little bit more professional way to go. But this works pretty well here, especially for a quick spot. Okay, so we are going to start grading one of these here. And quick color grading, just idea theory here. We've got, you might have like a 4-scope layout up here. If you have 4 scopes that are showing at the moment, and you want to use just a couple scopes at a time, like I say, you want to use just your vector scope and waveform. This is an RGB parade, this is a histogram, and I very rarely use a histogram in post-production color grading. More I use the RGB parade and the waveform and a vector scope. We're going to just pull this tab down and say 2-scope layout. If you have a different scopes here, you can right-click and tell it what scope you want to see. If you want to see a parade, if you want to see vector scope over here. And actually over here I want to see... this is a nice little addition that they've added to SpeedGrade. Before they had just the HLS vector scope, which helps with saturation, but the YUV is honestly the more common vector scope used. I'm glad they put this in here because it shows your saturation points suggested for standard definition versus high definition out here, which is really nice. But over here, we're just going to do some basic grading, so I'm just going to show a waveform. And they've also added this option right here where you can take away the RGB colors and just show it as a Luma waveform instead. Right here it's showing the RGB channels, which is kind of nice. It's kind of like a parade all mashed together in one waveform, but I like looking at a waveform for just brightness levels, just under a Luma chart here that just shows all your brightness levels within an image. The way a waveform works from left to right, you've got at 0 is what defines where your blacks lose detail. 100, what is called IRE, is where your whites start losing detail. And everything in between are your mids, what are considered your mids. So you got the darks, mids, and highlights here in the brighter areas of your image. And this goes from left to right. Let's move back a little bit where we see this darker portion of the building. Right, this will help right there. And you'll notice down here, on the left-hand side, we have some dark areas around like 10. That is this area right here. Now as we move over, we get some highlights about a third of the way over. Look at that highlight right there. As you move over, you see this you'll see this highlight right here going up. That is this building and the sky that's up here. That's kind of blowing out up there. So you can kind of see the individual shapes and the different layers of the windows from your middle building there. Anyway, so that's the way that works. From left to right, it shows how many darks, mids, and highlights you have in the image. And right now we have some that are just hitting around 100. The highlights are losing a little bit of detail. What we can do here to do some basic grading is first adjust this image. I'm going to bring the highlights down a little bit to bring some detail back. And this was shot on a Sony EX, or not an EX, a Sony F3 camera, so it has a little bit of dynamic range. And there is a little bit of detail. You'll notice the detail is coming back in the highlight right there. So we brought that down a little bit so the whites aren't quite clipping. Now the darks look like they are, you want the darks usually between 0 and 10. If you bring it down near 0, you're going to lose details in the darks. Watch this as I bring down my darks to 0. By the way, just a quick description of what these wheels are down here. This is your overall grading for this clip. Whatever your playhead is over, it's going to do the grading for that specific clip that is selected right there. Now these wheels belong to this clip. In the very beginning here, these wheels now belong to this clip. And overall, what we've got here, quick description. The outside is your brightness, your tonality slider here. You grab this little notch right here and you drag it left or right. It's going to change. This is changing the darks. Your offset, gamma, and gain will be your darks, your mids, and your lights, your highlights. So this outside slider deals mainly with, not with the color. It does not deal with the color as much as with the brightness. So as I grab this and drag it down, this is darkening the darks. And you'll notice here my darks are now hitting 0 and the detail has disappeared in the darks there. So that's crushed the image and we've gotten rid of the detail in the darks there. This can be helpful like in a film noir if you're trying to get something to fall off in the background or something like that, but normally you don't want your details to disappear in the dark. So I'm going to just actually reset that by hitting this little button there, and it resets it back to default. But what we do want out of this is kind of a nice contrasty image of what is called, we're going to create what's called an S-curve that creates that generates more of a cinematic look that gives you a little bit of contrast. Quick description of contrast is when you take your dark levels and your light levels and you stretch them, you get them further apart, and what you get is not such a flat image but more contrast as a result. Let me show you an example here. We're going to go to an image that looks a little bit flat right here. Not terribly flat, but a little bit flat here. Watch what happens as we bring down the darks. Don't want to bring down the darks too much because we don't want to crush the details, and the way you do that is by going to shadows. These 3 tabs, by the way, when you click on shadows, midtones, or highlights, shadows are basically turn these 3 wheels, offset, gamma, and gain, within your shadows. It's like the darker regions, the mid regions, and the lighter regions of your shadows. Now as you move to midtones, these wheels become the darker regions, the lighter regions, and the highlights of your midtones, of the more mid regions, and then with the highlights as well. You can create what's called an S-curve and not crush your details by using your shadows, midtones, and highlight tabs here. So if we grab our shadows, I'm not going to pull the bottom of my shadows down, but kind of the mids of my shadows down. And actually maybe without, I don't want to hit 0 here on my waveform, so I'm going to go up to the gain of my shadows and kind of bring those down a lot. Now I'm going to go to my midtones and kind of the mid region of my midtones. I'm going to start pulling that up, and now you'll notice, look at the waveform, we're getting that stretch. You're getting a stretch. Let me show before and after. And to show before and after, you're going to hit 0 on your numpad. And watch what happens. See, this is before, and that is after. Look over here at the waveform. That's before, that's after. This stretch equals contrast. That's creating what we call an S-curve. If you're using a Luma curve to grade, which SpeedGrade does not have. You have these options, which is actually more powerful and more, you have a lot more control than you do over just this curve that you're grabbing and adding nodes on. Then you have, now we have contrast to this image. So look, before, after. Looks more cinematic now as a result. So that is a basic description of how to change your tonality of your shot. You usually don't use overall. You're going to be using your shadows. You're going to use your overall if your darks are right up around 10, and you need to bring them down a little bit between 0 and 10. But then your shadows, you're going to usually bring the higher range of your shadows down. Your midtones, usually, then you're going to be pulling those up so you get that stretch here in your waveform monitor. Because my overall, this is might be a little bit underexposed, so I'm just going to bring up my general exposure by bringing up overall my midtones a little bit and brightening that image a little bit. And there you go. And we're getting kind of a good looking shot there. Okay, so let's go on to the colors here now. I'm going to go back to overall. With your colors, you have you've got this wheel in the middle here with a center point. You grab this and you drag it. Now this is in my darks. You're going to start changing your darker regions first by grabbing this and dragging it over to a specific color, to yellow, to blue, to magenta or red. The way this works is you've got the way this wheel works is you've got, if you look at your vector scope, you can really tell here. This is your vector scope. Your waveform is mainly for brightness levels, for tonality, and then your vector scope is for colors. From the middle point here, you have zero saturation. As you start growing out toward these regions, you have more saturation. In this image, we have a lot of saturation toward red and the yellow spectrum here. So we've got a lot of yellow and a lot of red in this. So if you want to make this look a little more neutral, what you can do is grab your mids. This is kind of your overall color here. On your overall, your mids. You grab this and we start dragging it in the opposite direction. You'll notice this wheel is a copy of your vector scope up here. You've got basically red, green, and your blue. We're working in RGB color space, so you got red, greens, and blues. But then the kind of the ranges in between are your yellow, your cyan, your magenta. But I'm going to grab this and drag it in the opposite direction. Yep, got to replace batteries. Drag it in the opposite direction of those colors, and you'll see, look at the vector scope as it changed colors, and you'll see my shot becoming more neutral. And it's correcting that shot, making it look not so warm or oversaturated. And actually, if you want to just bring the saturation down a little bit, make it not so colorful, you can drag this final saturation down, and you'll get less color. And you'll notice, look at the vector scope, if you pull it all the way in, it sucks that color into a dot, and you have no saturation, no color. And then as you bring it up, in fact, if you want this to look a little more colorful, then I'm going to boost the saturation a little bit. Now you got kind of this oversaturated look, which is kind of a cool look. Whatever you want to go with. There we go. So that's a quick explanation of your vector scope, of your waveform. One cool little shortcut to these wheels down here is your right click. You move over one of these wheels here, and you right click on it. If you right click, you don't hold it out, just right click once, and now it's turned your mouse into this kind of virtual color correction mouse, where if you move the mouse at all, watch what happens as I move the mouse. And I'm going to hold down shift. By the way, if you hold down shift while you're grading, it does it faster. It does it in faster increments. So I'm going to hold down shift while I'm doing this just to demonstrate how quick it is. And now as I move my mouse to the left, move it up to the right, I'm not holding down my right click. I just right clicked once, and now my mouse is this kind of free moving virtual color corrector here, which is really nice. Now, if you want to use your tonality slider at the top, I'm still in right click mode. You just use your scroll on your mouse, scroll up. I'm going to hold down shift to do it faster. You scroll up, it'll brighten it. Scroll down, it'll darken it. There you go. Then to get out of that, you just right click again, and now it exits and it retains the changes that you made. I'm going to undo that, get it back to normal there. But really quick, like I said, this is really nice. You just right click, and then you just start moving your mouse around. And if you hold down shift, it'll do it faster. You move your mouse around, and it turns it into this virtual wheel. Or you use your scroll on your mouse, and it does your brightness and contrast slider on the top. Very nice right click again to get out of it. Very cool little shortcut there. Okay, those are some of the basic ways to do your color images. Now, let's say you want to, let's go through some of the other basics here in SpeedGrade. Let's correct a quick image right here. Actually, let's show the matching feature here. The matching feature is one thing they've added in the 2014 updates. The way you're going to use your matching feature here, and I kind of like this and I kind of don't in a way, because it exercises a lot less control over your overall image. But you have this little 2 up right here. First of all, I'm going to get rid of my scopes by hitting A. The letter A on your keyboard will hide your scopes. If you hit it again, it brings them back. I'm going to hit A and get rid of them for right now, so I got a little bit more operating space. I'm going to go up here and hit this 2 up button, and it will bring up a secondary playhead. You can grab an individual playhead and move it from one shot to the next, and it will show you. This is really nice to compare shots. If you're trying to do some comparisons and get things to match, this is really helpful to have these 2 playheads up to do that. And the way this match color works is what it's going to do. When you click this button, you'll notice got this arrow pointing to the right. The way to remember this is it'll borrow from whatever image you have in the left screen and match it to the right. It's going to send this color look to the image to the right here. So what I'm going to do is line this up on an image that I want to match. First of all, as I move my number 2 playhead here, I want to get that on on an image in the left-hand screen that's going to match to the right. It's going to match it to the master playhead, which is 1 here. So the image that's in the left is going to match it to the right. I'm going to move it right over that clip right there. And so you can see that these are 2 completely different color temperatures here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hit this arrow to the right, and boom. Now this color temperature matches this one a lot closer. So it does a pretty good job of a match, and it adds it as a filter down here in SpeedGrade. Okay, a couple other things that I'm going to cover here and now we can go down to the primary of this clip here, and I'm going to go back to 1 up here. I'm just going to click on the 2 up and get it back to normal, and I'm going to try to match the contrast a little bit there, just on the primary color corrector. There's the match filter. You can turn that on or off. You can see the before and after, but this is now obviously a little too bright, so I'm just going to bring down the mids of that shot there a little bit, and it's looking a lot better. So there we go. As we cut from this shot to the next, now they look like they match. So very powerful tool, cool addition to 2014 updates. Couple other things we're going to cover really quick is if you want to copy and paste filters from one clip to the next, there's a couple ways of doing that. Say we want to borrow that look from 2 clips down here. Right here we want to take that look and apply it to this clip right here. Or let's do this. We'll go to this wider shot, and we want to take the look from this shot here and apply it to that shot there, because it's actually the exact same camera, the exact same angle, so this is going to be easy. Quick way of doing that is we're going to borrow it from 2 clips down. So the way you do that is you hold down Option and do either a negative or a plus on. It has to be on your numpad, and numpad only. If you're working on a laptop without a numpad, you really need to put in a keyboard and work off that. It'll be a lot easier. But you hold down Option or Alt, and you do, this is 2 shots forward, so I'm going to go, and we're going forward, so it's plus instead of minus. If you're borrowing it from backwards, it's going to be Option negative, but we're going Option plus. I just held down Option and hit plus. Now it's going to wait and say, okay, how far down do you want to borrow it from? And I'm going to say 2 clips down. So on the numpad, I'm going to hit the number 2, and it borrows that look from 2 shots down. The whole primary filter and the auto match filter, and this is a preview. If you want to keep that look, you just hit return on the numpad, and the preview, the return on your main keyboard, and it will take. And not on the numpad, but on the main keyboard, you hit return. Okay, if we don't like that, I'm going to undo that. Actually, I'm going to say, if we want to, here's a quicker way of doing it that they've added to the 2014 updates that are really nice. You can hover over with your mouse the clip that you want to copy from, and you just simply hit C. This is the one I want to borrow from. Let's go down 2 just to make sure. That's the shot. I want to borrow from that one and apply it here. You just simply hover your mouse over it and hit C, and it does it automatically. Really, really quick, really cool addition that they've added to really speed things up in SpeedGrade. So there's our first shot, our next shot, and our third shot, and all this is looking like it's matching so far. And if you want to, you have to really use scopes to make sure that everything is matching perfectly. But we've kind of basically covered that. But we're doing a basic tutorial here. So, all right, a couple other things here will be these SpeedGrade looks that they've added down here, which are quite cool. These settings and looks that they have down here under film stock. They've added some hatches and some cine looks and these styles down here. If you want some looks added, this is the way I'm going to recommend it. First of all, we're going to send this back to Premiere because we're going to do something in Premiere. In SpeedGrade, if you're using the full functional program, you can add additional adjustment layers up here and grading layers, which have been disabled for the which has been disabled in the Direct to SpeedGrade link, because this is referencing a Premiere project, so you're not able to edit the timeline at all. But with a full program, you can do that. But you can do it in Premiere by just sending this back to Premiere, saving the changes, yes, and we're going to add an adjustment layer in Premiere. You'll notice when we bring these clips over, when we go to the clips that we have changed, you'll notice you'll select the clip, and up in the effects controls, a lumetri filter has been added. That's your whole grading that you've done inside of SpeedGrade. You can simply turn that on or off, or even delete the lumetri effect that's been created but this lumetri effect that's been added is the grading you've done from SpeedGrade. And when you send that back over to SpeedGrade, it will still be there, and you can change it. There's my lumetri filter here. Turn that on or off and see the before and after. Here's the new clip. On and off. Now if we want to add an adjustment layer, say we want to add some sort of vignette to these options as well, what I can do is go down and we'll hit New Adjustment Layer, hit OK. I'm going to grab that adjustment layer and drag it in. I'm going to put this over the entire commercial here, or you can do it over a few different clips if you want. I'm actually going to do a couple of adjustment layers here, so we can do a couple little cool things here. So I'm going to add 2 adjustment layers. Now I'm going to send this back to SpeedGrade. Direct link to SpeedGrade again, say yes. This is a cool thing about this back and forth. As you go back and forth, if you add these layers, you notice they've now been added in here. Now these adjustment layers are going to affect all the clips below it. So if we want to add a vignette to the entire project, we can select that, and we can add a vignette to this. I'm going to minimize this here. So let's add a quick vignette. We're going to go to Mask, and I'm going to do a circle mask right here on this adjustment layer. Notice I have this adjustment layer affected here. And I'm going to grab my widget. I'm going to expand this here, and I'm going to expand the feather. Click and drag. If you want to look up widgets later on, look at my advanced SpeedGrade tutorial. It goes over masks in full detail. But we're going to make that feather far more prominent there. And I'm going to grab this primary layer. We're going to add the effect to the outside of the mask. Right there, apply to the outside of the mask. And now we're going to darken the outside of the mask here. And you'll notice we're adding a vignette here. This is a pretty harsh vignette, but I did that just so you could see the difference. Let's turn that grading layer off really quick and back on. Now watch this. You'll see that vignette being added, but I'm going to make this vignette a little more subtle. We're just going to bring down the opacity of that so it's not so harsh. And there we go. Drag that down to about 0 opacity. So we have a mild vignette throughout the entire movie. Usually vignettes you're going to do shot per shot, but this is if you want to add a general one to the entire commercial, entire project. Okay, one more thing here. Let's go through the looks down here. Let me bring this window up, and we're going to click on some of these and look at these looks. If we want like a look applied to the entire project when we're done, you can go down here and choose a specific look. Bleach Bypass, let's add this Bleach Bypass look to the entire project after everything's been graded and adjusted, and maybe you don't like that to be so extreme. I'm going to hit my return key to apply that lumetri effect. I had the preview lit up there. I'm going to go to my Bleach Bypass. I'm just going to tone that down a little bit. We're going to bring that down to maybe about 60% there. Let's look at 60%. There's before, there's after, and if you like the Bleach Bypass look for the entire movie, we have this adjustment layer affecting the entire movie for Bleach Bypass, and we have this adjustment layer affecting creating a vignette for the entire movie. And now the send back to SpeedGrade option here, or send back to Premiere. We showed this just a moment ago, but I'm going to hit this direct link to Adobe Premiere Pro. Click that, say yes, save the changes. And what SpeedGrade is doing is it is affecting the Premiere project file. It is not creating its own project file. It's just referencing the Premiere project file and changing it, updating it like it is like Premiere changes it. So now we have this nice look here. Let me turn off these adjustment layers here just so you can kind of see the difference, and I'm going to go and turn off this lumetri effect right there. So there's before, and there's our first layer added, there's our second layer added, our vignette, and there's our third layer, and we're starting to get this really nice looking commercial. And as we play through it, we've got these matched clips. Let's play through these few clips that we did adjust here. And we have 3 nicely matched shots with the kind of this cool bleach bypass and vignette that adds a little bit of style to this commercial. So that's about it. If you have any questions, I do have a more in-depth, it's like an hour and a half tutorial on SpeedGrade that kind of goes through a lot of the core features of SpeedGrade and shows how you really need to do color correction. If you have any questions or requests for tutorials, email me or send me a message, and I'll take those into consideration and probably do some future episodes on recommendations. So if you have any questions, just message me and subscribe to the channel, and there you go.